if Diddy is found guilty, here's the thing. Will he go broke? And what does that say for wealthy men and men who are rich? Because rich and wealthy can be two different things, but men of very high means. What do that say when we're talking about relationships for non-celebrities? So New York had that, what was it, the look back law.
Yes.
It allowed women to come forth and said, listen, I was art or sexually assaulted, or he just hurt my feelings. But what happened, New York and New Jersey, because New Jersey lawyers got in on it too. But what happened, the lawyers in New York State got together and said, well, we're only going to take cases basically of complaints against people who make, I believe was like $500,000, because they need to see a profit from it. It all comes down to money. So when you look at it, the whole dynamic of how you date, don't fly a woman out to come see you, because that could be considered human trafficking. This is why I'm not siding with Diddy and his behavior. No, but legally, you're charging this man with RICO and trafficking, interstate, bringing in people interstate or whatever. And these were his girlfriends. So paying for prostitutes, okay, is wrong. So what I'm saying is, what if he is found guilty? Will he go broke? And what does that say about the future of relationship dynamics?
Can I ask you one question? If you're familiar with New York law, what is the statute of limitations on filing a wrongful death action?
A wrongful death action? I'm not sure about that.
I think it's 2 years, isn't it? In other words, there's a tort.
It's a tort, exactly. Wrongful death. I mean, I can't imagine that it would be much longer, because if somebody dies, how long do you actually need, right?
Yeah. So the thing that gets me is, I'm not getting on. I understand the sentiment, but because somebody squeezed somebody's body parts 19 years ago, why is the statute of limitations extended to embrace that? But on a homicide, a wrongful death, it's only 2 years or 1 year, depending upon the state. Doesn't make sense to me.
I see your point. Listen, I think the Me Too movement had a lot to do with that. I think the ability for women and men to come forward with their stories and open up that door, whether you believe in the Me Too movement or not, that is what really was the linchpin to open up these doors in New York City. And Cassie got in right down in the nick of time, and so did a lot of other people. But you're right, the logic is imbalanced. In that case, let's open up everything else so that people can come with their claims, and let's extend things by, a decade or two. But it's kind of like Lyle and Eric Menendez. Nobody was talking about that until they made, the series, and then it became an issue, and now they're going to, be paroled soon. So it's in our cultural conversation, and it has a lot of currency the more that we are talking about it. And so that's why I mentioned Eric and Lyle, and that we were talking about it. So all of a sudden it was on somebody's table. We're talking about rape and allegations and the casting couch. And so that's why it became more of an issue. And that's what happens when we as a culture bring things and make them rise so that everybody is talking about it. That's why the algorithm is so important. You got folks talking about things that they never would have talked about, but all of a sudden it's in their algorithm. So I think that that's the main reason why. But you definitely make good sense. But Dana, to answer your question in terms of, all right, well, what could he potentially lose? Well, we know that already. If he was worth almost $1 billion, we know that he's lost a lot already, and that now records are saying that he's worth $400 million. So now he's got half of what he is making. He's got 9 lawyers, all right? He's probably spending $100,000 a day for people who are working around the clock in order to deal with this case. So slowly but surely, his value is going down every single day. Let's start there. But in terms of what he could lose, if they can connect it, they, meaning the prosecution, can connect it with everything that he did. For example, this happened in this particular house. Well, that's connected to the crime if he raped Cassie in that house, or if he beat Cassie in that house. And then remember, we've got the civil lawsuits that it could also connect, and there could also be a forfeiture civilly without any type of criminal prosecution. So the potential of him losing, if the jury says yes to RICO, is he loses everything, even his interest that he had in Revolt, which he no longer has now, right? Revolt is now owned by people who have an interest who work there. It's owned by the workers. If that is said to be a part of his criminal enterprise, he loses that too, even though he has no financial interest in it today. So everything is at stake. His publishing, his royalties, his Sean John, even though it's not worth that much, everything that he has, his cars, his jet, his homes, everything could be at stake. Everything.
I do know he's still making money renting out his private jet and renting out his mansion in LA, which can help just pay for the legal fees, probably just for a month alone, but it helps. But that's what I was getting at when we were speaking earlier and tonight. You know, if he is found guilty, record companies, they're going to swoop in and try to claim all those masters.
Yeah. Well, so they wouldn't be able to. That would be subject to RICO confiscation too. Successful RICO thing, there'd be nothing for anybody to get. And the point is what is the U.S. government going to do with the rights of the properties?
Right. Well, what they normally do, and you're right, it might look different on paper than in what happens in reality, but, you know, they fund victims' rights, they train police officers, they, you know, could train a dog program, they could use it for witness protection program. That's what they say. Once they get all of that money under their umbrella, those are the types of things that they do with it. Judge, you are correct. Once it's gone, it's gone. And the other thing is, you know, my sister works in music publishing, and there's always this question of, is it tainted so much that anybody would want the music anymore? For R. Kelly, I think that was a big issue. I think that people are, you know, not a lot of people are putting that music on at the wedding. But I think that after a while,
people still want the Diddy music.
Yeah,
people
I think so. For some reason, and maybe because it didn't involve children, in terms of these particular charges. I don't know what else is out there. Maybe that is it. But no, people aren't turning off Faith Evans. They are not in the way that they shut down R. Kelly. No.
R. Kelly kind of admitted his crimes by what he was talking about doing, and he didn't see any problem with it. He kept saying the parents consented, but that's like, wow, this is what I'm doing, but the people who were supposed to say no didn't, so it's not my fault. Well, you did it.
Mm. So I have one more question on the Diddy topic, and then I'm moving to the LA riots. Well, did he take the stand, and do you think he should take the stand?
We can say this together, right, Judge? This man should not take the stand. Here's how I look at it. Do you remember his apology video, people who are out there? The apology video that he prepared, I don't know, it was at least a couple of days he had to say, all right, let me apologize. And you see what he came up with?
Well,
that did not work.
Let me offer a historical perspective on that. That very courtroom that this is being held in, or that division of New York's federal courts, there was a gentleman nicknamed Lucky Luciano. He is the godfather of godfathers. He formed the syndicate. He was almost untouchable, and they put on a case against him, which was a flim-flam case. Dewey tried the case. He ultimately became New York governor and a candidate for president twice. And he was lusting after getting Lucky Luciano on the witness stand. Well, Luciano's lawyers begged him not to get on the stand, but he said no, he was going to clear his name. And the more he opened his mouth, the more he built a case that previously did not exist against him. So that's not a very good move.
I have another thought about this, and that is Kristina Khorram, or Khorram, that you might have heard. Her nickname is KK. She's his chief of staff, has been for a while. And we've heard her name dozens of times, the same way that we've heard Suge Knight's name dozens of times throughout this trial. She was his right-hand woman at all times. There were many times where she would be tracking down Cassie or tracking down Jane or tracking down something like, where are you? Where are you? Sean Combs wants you. She was the one who, is making the appointments for a girlfriend to get her teeth redone because Sean doesn't like the teeth. She's there. She's pictures with him. She's at all the white parties. She knows everything. Now, if she takes the stand, she's going to tell it all if she gets immunity, which she probably would have to. We've had 3 people so far take immunity. At that point, if I'm Sean Combs and I'm looking at KK, the one who I've made my chief of staff, who I've trusted with everything, I might feel the ego and gumption to get on that stand, because I might feel like this is all I have left, because she is going to present well. If you've seen KK, she's going to present well, and she's going to give it all up to make sure that she doesn't get in trouble, because really she is the unnamed co-conspirator. Many of these people are. It's just that they're getting immunity and that they're unnamed. But that woman knows everything. Out of everybody, she knows everything. And I think that once she testifies, which I'm the prosecution, I'm making sure that happens. I'm Diddy, I'm talking to my attorneys, maybe I should testify. That's my thought about it. Like, she's not going to bring me down. Plus, he's got a lot of ego. So first 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I was like, no, he's never going to testify. Why? That KK, the way she started emerging, I think it's going to take a different turn if she takes the stand.
It might. Question is what kind of immunity they're going to give, a testimonial or transactional?
So the level of immunity that they got was not transactional. What they said was, you get this immunity for purposes of anything that's connected to this particular case, except for perjuring yourself, right? Yeah, so it could be still, that opens up the door, right? Still for civil cases, that doesn't kind of stop that. But I think she's going to go for the gold if she does take the stand. I can't see how she would not take the stand. We also haven't heard from security guards. Security guards were there every step.
I don't understand why. Okay, they're going to have to give security guards immunity because they watched everything and they let it go on. They watched Cassie getting beat several times. They did. And
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, all through this trial, we have heard about RICO, organized crime. We have yet to hear anything about anybody being involved in any criminal enterprise. Not one shred of evidence from somebody who got on this stand and started testifying, I was there, I did it.
Mm-hmm. But Judge, is it not the truth that a criminal enterprise is not the way that we imagine, right? People sitting at a table smoking, saying, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that. It can happen as a matter of fact that you're a security guard thinking that you're doing a job, but really it translates into you being a co-conspirator. It's not like anybody has to announce it and say, this is who we are. It doesn't have to be a formalized group. It doesn't have to be incorporated. It could be 5 buddies stealing cars.
Yeah.
That could be an enterprise. So I think that I don't know. I think, you know, in terms of if I'm getting the jury instruction, I could go that way. I don't know, Dana, you tell me.
Well, I mean, think about it. If you have a mafioso captain,
okay,
he's got to have soldiers in order to carry out his enterprise. If you don't hear anything about any soldiers except unnamed ones, you don't hear any evidence against them, or you hear something but nobody's indicted, you go, wait a minute, this guy's supposed to be running the criminal enterprise. Where is the rest of the posse?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
that's the question that I have, especially, and I'm like, the D-Rock, he came, his name came out of the mouths of a whole bunch of witnesses that came up. And I'm like, this man seen and witnessed everything, all of the bruises that Cassie received, you know, the prostitutions coming in, the drugs. So, and you don't, and okay, aside from the RICO, you don't say, listen, I didn't get hired to do this, because then it's my job to call authorities on you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So at one point, it's not just common sense, but your conscience kick in and say, yeah, this is not right. Like this is beyond, this is not right. It's not normal. But people wanted the money. They wanted the lifestyle. They wanted to be part of that fame and fortune that they did not work for. He did. And he knew that. He knew they were hanger-ons. And I'm sorry, Cassie was a drug addict.
True.
She was a sex addict. She was a drug addict. And she was addicted to the fame and fortune, rock and roll lifestyle. This Jane Doe that's up there now, same thing. Capricorn Clark, same thing. You talking about something? Well, he was paying me 20,000 for a month, and he would say, "Well, I'm not going to pay if you don't participate." If this is what this man is into. If you want to be a part of his world and you want to receive all these, tangibles, you got to participate. But if you don't want to participate, okay, fine. Just I'll find someone else. Goodbye. They wanted the tangibles and they were willing to do anything for it, which is why if I was a juror, I'm going to say not guilty, because the charge, if this is a domestic violence, yes, you're guilty. RICO, no, you're not guilty. I think all you people up here are sick.
Dana, let me ask you a question. Dana. You don't have to speak from your own personal relationships, but we all know that not all relationships turn out well, right? And there's a point in a relationship where you are happy and, oh, let me please this person. Yeah, I hate football, but I'll go to football games. Whatever their threshold is. You can have both exist. You can have someone say, you know what, I was down for this, but then it changed. Then he started holding this over my head. So I think you can have both. I think you can have the, yes, I love the lifestyle. I love the shopping, $500,000.
Stockholm syndrome.
What's that?
Stockholm syndrome.
True. And also you're holding this video over my head. What am I going to do about this? Because you're not going to lose anything, because I'm the one he's not releasing videos of the both of us, losing the videos of me. And so then that's where I think it changes. And so if we look at the dynamics of just a relationship that we all have, and again, I'm speaking like this because we are on the prosecution side. When we start talking about the defense's side, I'll have more to say. They just haven't made their case. So it might seem unbalanced in terms of me saying this, but I'm just saying, so far we know how relationships change. And I think that that's what jurors might take away, that sometimes this is the evolution of a relationship, especially when you're holding something over my head and have my mama involved. That's a problem.
Yeah, well, your mama knew that you were with a monster, and
True. She took pictures of the bruises.
Probably benefiting, and he gave the money back. It seemed like it was a lot of mind games, going back to the manipulation was going on here. But yeah, when you're sucked into that type of toxic relationship and everybody's high, you really got to hit rock bottom to just leave. And it took, when Kim Porter, when she passed away, that's when Cassie left. But then you find out when Cassie took the stand, because when Kim Porter passed away and it was announced, and then all of a sudden we see Cassie married less than 6 months or something after that. A lot of people were saying, oh, she bounced and dumped Sean, because thinking that maybe Diddy has something to do with Kim Porter and she didn't want to turn out like that. That's what people were talking. However, during this trial, no, after Kim Porter passed away and Diddy was mourning for Kim Porter, she left. She finally left because he said Kim was my soulmate. He said, it's never going to change. I'm never going to be the one, but you never were the one. And that's why she stayed all those years, hoping that he would just finally make her the one. And if anybody was going to be the one, he should have married Kim Porter. But that's why, come to find out, that's why she left, because he said in a text and on the phone, because Cassie said it, that Kim Porter was my soulmate.
Yeah. Now, you are correct. I'm wondering two things. One, I'm wondering about the power of the expert witness. And then I'm also, I want to share that during the opening arguments, the defense, that is key to what they said, that this particular case is about two things. It's about domestic violence and jealousy. And so they really made that clear. And they've been trying to drive it home. They'll probably do it more when they have their chance. but they did try to kind of nitpick, to get some jealousy aspects out of this. But I'm wondering how the expert witness kind of sits on people, especially domestic violence witnesses, Judge Brown, that you have seen. Do they help contextualize, or do you think that they add layers that may not sometimes be helpful?
It helps if the jury is disposed to go for what they have to say. Mm-hmm. Jurors are so prone to disregard anything that has to do with mental health. They just don't believe in it unless they've actually had to run into it themselves. I used to tell some of the prostitutes I represented, I said, look, I can get you out of this mess you're in with your pimp, but you have to stay off the hoe track. If you keep going back out there, he's going to grab you again. You'll be right back in thrall inside of 2 or 3 days. And I could get them out of it, but they never would stay off what we call the hoe track. They'd be right back out there and they'd get grabbed. Mm-hmm. And there was a dynamic that was involved with them having this self-hate, low self-esteem thing. And they thought they deserved to be punished. So they would keep going back to somebody that treated them in a fashion that was consistent with the way they perceived themselves. It was kind of a sick thing. I'm sure they can get a psychologist to do that, but it happens often in Hollywood. That's one of the best kept secrets with the motion picture and television industry, is how little some of the stars think of themselves. And that's why you run into so many that be on drugs.
Sure, because of how they think about themselves.
Yeah, they are not getting high to get high. They're getting high to die.
Yeah. So, I used to work on the domestic violence response team. I'm in New Jersey, and I work with a lot of women, and I would go and give them guidance, sometimes in the hospital where, their mouth would be busted. They would still want to go back to their husband for a lot of reasons. But to be up and close and personal and to really be able to accept expert witness testimony, you do get a clearer picture as to, okay, why is this happening? You get caught, you're brainwashed in it. You think you don't have your self-value and self-worth is attached to that person who's abusing you. And then really, it's not like one of those things where, listen, if somebody is an alcoholic, right? If they're off of alcohol for 3 years, what do? We celebrate. It like people talk about it openly. You get a cake. You might even have a party. I've been sober for 3 years. But not when you're beating someone. It is so quiet. No one's talking. No one talks about, yeah, I'm being beat, or I haven't beaten my wife in 3. No one's taking that. So it's such a quiet, kind of hidden, specific type of thing that a lot of people just aren't in the realm of being open to it, to really understand it. And that makes it worse too. We don't talk about domestic violence in the same way that we might talk about someone getting over an addiction. And that is a problem. And I think that that's probably part of the like you said, why people may not be open to it. We're just not trained to hear a psychologist to try to understand what's going on. We just don't talk about it openly.
You're right. When it comes to certain categories, I had the unusual experience of having a prostitute who was also a stripper, very pretty woman. She's very smart. I can't get into too many details because now she's a practicing clinical psychologist. And she and I went over this, and what our conclusions were when we went through her history and those of a lot of the other prostitutes was people want to be accepted as they perceive themselves. And they have such a low thing about their own self-image that when the pimp sells them, they're dumb, stupid, ugly, and nobody will put up with them but them. They say he sees me as I really am. And when he beats me, he knows that I'm an evil person and I deserve this. Interestingly enough, it was her thesis she wrote. And I found it interesting that a pimp can't turn out a woman, but her preacher can, and her female relatives can. And the pimp just becomes a parasite who can recognize somebody who's been corrupted and come in and treat them like they perceive they ought to be treated. So it's like found out when I was rehabbing people. You can't rehab them and get them to want to live. You have to get them to want to live before they'll rehab, because what they do is a form of self-destruction because of their negative self-concept.
You know, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna eventually switch gears to LA. Did you want to stick around for that conversation?
You know what? I am going to drop off, but I'm going to be watching y'all about LA and also looking at these
That's
videos.
like you haven't been paying attention too much about because you've been dealing with the Diddy trial.
Yeah, today specifically because I was just back-to-back interviews. So I'm going to choose to watch y'all in that regard.
Okay.
Very interesting perspective you have.
What's that?
Very interesting perspective you have. It seems objective to me.
Oh, well, I thank you. I thank you. Listen, good people, it was fun. I see all your people, popping up, and you guys have a wonderful audience and just have a wonderful energy. So thank you for having me on.
Thank you.
One suggestion.
Yes, one suggestion.
If you don't know her, stay the devil away from Nancy Grace.
I'm sorry. You know what, Dana? This is your show. But thank you for that advice. Can I ask you why? Can you do it in 20 seconds? Dana, am I terrible?
Okay, I'll tell you why.
He'll tell you.
I'll tell you why. I knew a lot of the judges out in LA, recruited some of them to law school. So when I went out there, they gave me a tour of the evidence room and I talked to a lot of people. And Nancy Grace was saying, today, just devastating evidence against the defense. And people would say it was pretty good for the defense. And I recorded every scrap of the thing. And I say, it doesn't get any better than that from defense. And she was just simply lying to the public and relying upon her position to promote herself with the inflammatory tale that probably has most of the country thinking OJ got away with murder, when most of the people that heard the trial said, what was that all about? They didn't have any proof against the man, and they had a lot of it that the man was framed.
She does a lot of sensationalism too, whereas, and this is what I'm saying, I really, really do appreciate you coming up on my platform, and I really need to shout out the new party, Nora, because you met Nora when she was there.
I did, yes.
That's how I got the connection with you, through Nora from the new party. And that's when the judge said you're very objective, and you are, because a lot of people, especially legal analysts that have platforms, big platforms, a lot of them are just one-sided, but they're sensationalize a lot of stuff. To whereas, no, you're going to talk about the prosecutors, the defense, the jury, the judge, the atmosphere in the courtroom, outside the courtroom, because it all matters.